Hi, welcome to Warehouse 34. I am your host. I am Morton-Gattullo, and today I have a very special guest. I have my dear friend and cousin. I am so proud that he's here with us. My cousin Albert Gattullo.
Hi, Diane. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for coming. How are you?
I'm good.
How's life? How's your family?
Life is good. Family's good. We just got a new addition to the family. We got a dog, so very exciting. A 6-year-old rescue. His name is Chase. He's just awesome and lovable, and we couldn't be more thrilled.
Big, small?
Oh, big, 75 pounds.
Oh, so he wouldn't fit in my pocketbook?
No, he would not fit in your pocketbook.
Because that's all I can have.
Dogs.
I can only have a pocketbook dog. I'm afraid of anything else beyond what could fit in my handbag.
They're very popular dogs. We were talking with the people from the shelter, and they said those dogs, when they come into the shelter, there is a waiting list a mile long. People want those types of dogs.
You know, the fun thing about having a small dog is you can take it anywhere, but 9 times out of 10, the small dogs are like, really, really pretty girls. They're, a handful.
Yeah, they want to be, and they want to be pampered.
Yeah. Right. So you have to pick the right breed, and hopefully you get it when it's really young, so you train it not to be a snippy barker.
Right.
And that's something I can't handle.
That's exactly the type of dog I didn't want. I said, I don't want a yapper. I just want a dog.
I want a really cool, very easygoing dog.
Sure.
We always had dogs, and our last dog that passed away, Madison named, and it was a Cavalier King Charles, and she named it Princess Tutu.
Aww.
And Tutu was a very unusual dog. She could just chill out and sit in my handbag or on Steve's shoulder and go all around the world. You could take it to a casino, nobody would even know she was there. As long as her little gumdrop nose, popped out of the bag, she was all good.
That's great.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep. So everybody talks to me because, I'm in the bar business, and I brought some props with me today.
Right.
Because my dad, when I was young, worked for Wrangell Breweries. And since you are a craft beer guru and you have this great podcast, I had to bring along some of the other side of it, the more traditional.
Sure.
So when I was a kid, this was my dad's beer glass. And when the Wrangell beer truck would roll down my block, because my dad was an engineer for Wrangell, and he had done a favor for one of the beer guys, so they made sure the truck made a stop at my house once a week.
That's awesome.
And it was like ringing the ice cream good humor bell for adults, and all the men on the block would come running out when the beer truck came to go get the cases, and my dad would have them lined up in the basement along the whole wall.
Now, were they the old wooden cases with the bottles? Oh, that's fantastic.
Yep.
I still have a Budweiser case that I use to put stuff in that my dad had gotten when we were kids. And those were the old school boxes that would hold the bottles of beer, and you'd bring them back for the deposit. Good times.
I have so many things from beer, and in particular Wrangell, because the woman who owned the Wrangell beer company also owned the Mats, and she liked my dad. She was the one who used to come to our house in a limo, and she kind of reminded me of Jackie O. She had a hat and gloves and coat and pocketbook and shoes, and her dress all the same color.
Right.
Very like...
meticulous.
Yes, but just like the Queen or Jackie O, where everything was monochromatic.
Right.
And she would come and sit in our little apartment before my parents bought a house, and sit there and tell my father that he needed to go get another degree, that he needed to do something else in life. And actually, if it wasn't for her, my dad would have never had the career he had.
Wow.
But Wrangell was his start, and then Mobil Oil, and then the United Nations.
Right.
But the Wrangell glass that my dad so proudly poured his Wrangell beer that I actually never liked, because I just thought it was kind of like, didn't have the taste for me, but I was kind of young. I used to grab this glass all the time and put my milk in it and have my cookies, and my father would freak out. You're not allowed to put milk in a beer glass.
Right.
But I didn't understand that. I just liked it because it was red.
Yeah.
That was my glass. So we wound up having to everybody had to have their own glass, and this was like in a different cabinet.
So that you could have your milk and cookies.
Yeah. So I would never touch his beer glass again, because it had some sort of terrible taste in it. But you're not only a craft beer podcaster and guru over here. You do something else in the morning that's very cool.
Yeah, so I work with Joe Piscopo. We do a political talk show out of New York. It's on AM 970, The Answer. We're on from 6 to 10 in the morning. And we talk politics. We talk other stuff, too. But obviously, politics is the big thing for everybody. I mean, I really don't care. I'll give my political views. I would say a moderate Republican. I am not one of these far right, far left, or
I'm
whatever
very
you
middle
want
of
to
the
call
road
it. Very,
myself.
very middle of the road.
Yeah. But I like your show because
Thank
it doesn't. I mean, some shows for me go a little too extreme on either end, and I'm very middle of the road. But I like your show, and I listen. I listen to it A because it's you, and then B, I like Joe. I think he's a nice guy, and I actually was on the show years ago.
That's right. That's
Yes.
right. You were on the show. Oh my God, that was how long ago?
I was on with you and Joe, and then I think the hour after I was on with John Gambling.
That's right. Oh, that's when John was still. Yeah, we had brought John in for about a year or two. Our boss Jerry Crowley had brought him back to do mid-morning. So
John was involved with the Guardian Angels,
that's
and
right.
I was the director of operations for the Alliance of Guardian Angels. So I knew him from that.
Right.
And then the particular subject matter that I was in the newspapers for, he found interesting, and that's when he put me on.
Right.
But I had a good experience. You are always, I love you. You're family. But Joe was so nice to me. I mean, he's just a really nice guy.
Joe's a sweetheart. He is one of those guys who, when you meet him, he is full of energy. He is full of life. He is constantly working. We talk about it all the time. It's become a running joke on the show about how he never takes a day off. And when he does take off, it's to go work somewhere.
Right.
He just did a marathon earlier this week where he was out in Long Island on Monday, back out on Long Island again on Tuesday, having to run to all these different things, whether it's to sing. I think he sang at a cocktail hour for something, and then to run back. But he loves to do that, and he loves to entertain people, and that's a great thing. And this is for us every day. It's 4 hours of entertainment. We try to keep it serious in certain areas. Obviously, when there's big news that's breaking, we have to be serious. But a lot of times we joke around. Our biggest joke now is about how Joe told a story last summer. He has a shore house down on Long Beach Island, and he's going out to swim one day, and he was telling the lifeguard that he was going to go beyond the people. So he wanted to go like past where people were swimming. But the way he said it, I stopped him and I said, "You didn't just say beyond the people, did you?" And he goes, "Yeah, I did." I said, "But who are you beyond the people?" Like, what? Excuse me, son. I'm heading out beyond the waves, beyond the people, to go and swim. You have to keep an eye on me, not these peasants that are over here by the moat. I mean, that's how he was reacting. So that's become the running joke now. So anytime he does something where he expects something that should be above what most normal people do, I bust his chops about that. So
well, I'm glad that he has the courage to go beyond the people and go out there. I belong to a beach club in Breezy Point in Queens, right next door to Rockaway. So it's the when you make the right to go into Breezy Point, Silver Gull, I look at the ocean. The beach is literally right on my doorstep of the cabana.
Right.
And six this way. We're all friends over 40 years. I go to the pool. I set up my chair, or the cabana guy sets up the chair, so I could look at the ocean.
Right.
I don't go in the ocean. I don't do anything. I do go to the water's edge with my binoculars to look for sharks, because this summer it's the summer of the shark.
Yeah, have to be careful.
Yeah.
And part of that is because, not to get too technical, but part of it is because the waters are cleaner, the waters are warmer, and the fish are following the food. So that's...
See, you could go with that thought and that theory. I just think that they know I'm there, and they know that, Steve cooks well, and that I eat great things, and I'm like a buffet, and they're just waiting for me to put a toe in.
Okay.
The moment I go, every shark...
They come right after you.
They're coming right there. They're like, we want to go taste Steve's food again.
Got it.
That's exactly it.
Fair enough. Listen, your husband is a great chef, so
Well, your cousin.
That's right. He is
your
my cousin, and he does a great job.
Thank you. So he's the food guy, and you are now this craft. Tell me, how did you get into this craft?
I sort of fell into this whole thing with the craft beer.
What's the name of your podcast?
So it's the Al Gattullo Craft Beer Cast. It's on Sunday nights on AM 970 The Answer, 11 o'clock at night. It's not live. I record it just so that people know, because I do get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday. So it's a little difficult for me to be doing a show on Sunday night at 11 o'clock and then get up, the next morning to work. So the show is about beer, but it's also about the business of beer. It's also about small business,
right?
Because small business is the lifeblood of America.
Yes,
it's it's how everybody kind of gets started. Even the big box store like Walmart started as a small little general store in the center of town in Arkansas before it became the big conglomerate that it is. And small business, as I said, is the lifeblood of America. And the craft beer business has exploded in the last, I would say, 15 years. More so in locally, I would say in the last 10, where you're seeing breweries popping up all over the place. There's 2 great ones on Staten Island. There are more that are coming in New York City. There are over 500 in New York State due to Governor Cuomo relaxing some laws that allowed breweries, cideries, wineries to thrive, which kudos to him that he was able to do that, which brings in more tax revenue to the state. In New Jersey, it's a little different. They were a little slower to get going. There's about 140 breweries, about 130 of them are open, 10 are in production to open. But it has become a significant business in the Garden State where over $1 billion of tax money goes directly to the state coffers. So it's become, I don't want to say it's a big business. I would say it's a medium business, but it's one that a lot of people will hang their head on. Now, how I discovered craft beer, oddly enough, was I think my first craft beer was a Samuel Adams back in the 80s. And the craft beer business has had its ups and downs. It started really in the 70s when former President Carter signed a bill that allowed that made home brewing legal. Before that, it was illegal due to prohibition and all the other stuff. When prohibition was repealed, home brewing was never really put on the books as being legal. So when people were doing it in their house, it was illegal. So in the 70s, he signed a law saying people could start home brewing, and now all of a sudden, home brewing started to take off. So Sam Adams rolls around; they become the first big craft brewer. Even though Jim Koch will tell you he's not a big fish in the pond, but he is. But anyway, it had its ebbs and flows in the 90s, and then in the 2000s, it really started to take off and became more accessible to people. And I think a lot of the I would say the Gen X, the Gen Zs, they would start to go to bars and they wanted something different.
Right.
First it was Zima in the late in the
I
90s
remember
and
that.
stuff. Remember something different, whatever. And then you had all these different, Ice House and all these different crazy variations. But most of those beers were being made by big beer companies, by the Budweisers, the Millers, the Coors, all these different people. They didn't really capture what a lot of people were experiencing when they discovered really good beer for the first time. Jim Koch tells the story with Sam Adams about how he discovered beers in Europe and wanted to duplicate that here in America, and he couldn't get certain ingredients because they were in Europe. But eventually they started to develop these different tastes, and these beers started to be imported from Europe, and they started to figure things out, and people their brains started to click, and they started figuring out how to put together these recipes. So anyway, I would say this was 2015. The story of how my show goes is I was at my community pool where I live in New Jersey, and a hot day, and I'm getting ready to go in the pool, and a friend of mine calls, and he says, hey, I just got laid off. What are you doing? I said, I'm at the pool with my son. Why don't you come down? He says, all right, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He gets there. We're about to jump in the pool. There's an accident. Ooh. So now we're going to leave the pool. It's 90 degrees. It's a hot day. People want a relief. I said, listen, I just got some beers that I bought from a brewery out in San Diego. Why don't you come over? We'll have a couple. Okay. I take a picture of the beer. I tweeted it out. I have no idea what compelled me to do that. But within 2 minutes, the brewery is following me, and I get a message. And apparently the person there, for the PR person there, is a rep who used to live on the East Coast. And she says, oh, thanks for giving us some East Coast love from the West Coast and blah, blah, blah. And she says, what's your address? We'd like to send you something. So I send her my address. I figure they're going to send me a sticker or, a T-shirt or whatever. 4 days later, I get an enormous box of beer filled with big bottles, small bottles, T-shirts, hats, stickers, all kinds of stuff.
Wow.
I called my friend. I said, come over, take some of this stuff because I can't drink all of this. He takes it. He says, you should do a show on this. I mean, I've been in the radio business for 30 years, so he's, you should do. Yeah, I kind of put it off. I started doing some YouTube videos, and I started tasting some of the beers, and I started giving people my opinions on what what it tasted like, and et cetera, et cetera. And lo and behold, it's about 4 months later. This is still 2015, and my boss comes to me at our Christmas party, and he says, "So I hear you doing YouTube videos about beer." I said, "How'd you find that out?" He says, "Well, one of the guys, showed me the video." I said, "Oh, that's great." And he says, "Well," he says, "You think you can do a show about it?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, if you can sell it, do it. I said, well, hold on a second. We're at a Christmas party. We're both kind of, drinking a little bit and having a good time. I said, tell me this again on Monday when you're sober, and I'll believe you. Sure enough, that Monday he says, if you can sell it, you can do it. Lo and behold, 3 months later, we started doing the show.
Wow.
So, and it's kind of, I've been doing the show now for over 6 years. So we started in February 2016. Next February will be, I'm kind of slow with math, but that's 7 years. So it's been a lot of fun. But what's great is I love being able to spotlight all the different breweries from around the country, not just locally,
right.
To be able to highlight different beers, but also to find out what it is and why they got into beer. What was the motivation? Was it because they were tired of their business? I find that a lot of the guys who got into the beer business, the smaller owners, they were always home brewers. They were always putzing around, and they were trying to figure out how not to work for corporate America anymore. They were retiring. They wanted to get out. They were tired of the 9-to-5 grind. Now, being a brewer is much more than a 9-to-5 grind. It's a constant 24/7 operation. You're constantly going to the brewery in the middle of the night, checking on things, temperatures, and certain things. But it's a labor of love. You're creating something that other people are enjoying. And so, to me, the finding out those stories about those people, that's the interesting part to me. The other part of it is the small business aspect of it, that knowing that when you're buying one of these beers from somebody, you're putting money in somebody's pocket that's going to help pay for their mortgage or help pay for a kid's education or whatever the case may be. I think a lot of times I would rather put my money to supporting a small business like that than maybe necessarily giving it to a big box store. I'm
very brand loyal, and I look at where the corporations spend their money when I attach myself to that product before I fall in love with it. I need to know a little bit about it. And during COVID, no secret, 44 years in the nightclub business. I've been a bartender in the nightclubs. And I became very supportive of Tito's, even though I'm not a big vodka drinker, because Tito's started a fund for unemployed bartenders. And I just felt that was like such a cool thing, because we basically make Tito's what it is. Sure. We push it. When somebody turns around and says something, can I get a vodka and cranberry? I immediately, call your vodka. And if they don't say it, I'm like, Tito's? I push Tito's. So Tito's sells because of someone like me. And, multiply that by millions of bartenders. So we make those products successful. And I felt, although I did not, go for any of the grants or anything like that, there are other people who really needed it. And I really liked Tito's for that. So I have a lot of Tito's tchotchke things too. And it's funny because Guy Fieri did this at the very beginning of the pandemic, where he was trying to give back to restaurant owners and raise $25 million in a heartbeat. And kudos to him and the fact that he has all these great relationships with all of these big, the Pepsis and all these people in the world. That's awesome. But when it's people like Tito's, there was an organization in New Jersey that did this. It was called Brewery Strong, where they had people, buying T-shirts and hats and stickers and stuff, and they were donating the money to bartenders that were out of work. You call them, you fill out an application, they would send you $500. Yeah. No questions asked. As long as you filled out all the information and it was legitimate, they got money into your hands, because people needed that. The bartending industry, the restaurant industry, and even the brewery industry was pretty devastated by COVID. People were home. They couldn't be at their place of business serving people or doing any of the things that, cooking or, whatever the case may be. And the people that survived in that portion of the pandemic were the people that were able to shift their business model, slightly, especially like the breweries. A lot of these guys were, their business was based on selling draft beer to bars. They couldn't do it. Tell me the difference of all of it. So traditional beers and lagers and craft beer and draft beer and bottled beer. I know, beer. But just in case somebody else. So for the viewer, the traditional beers like Budweiser, Coors Light, those types of beers, they're lagers, they're pilsners, but they're made in a more cheaper fashion than the lager and the pilsner that we have in front of you here. Most Budweiser beers made with rice. It's inexpensive, easier to make, tastes watery. That's what I thought when I was a kid. Yes.
So it tastes watery. But lagers and pilsners now, by craft brewers, they're made with better ingredients. There's some of them use corn, but some of them use real good malt and barley, things that are grown on a farm, not cheaper ingredients that get the beer out faster. Those beers take longer to make, lagers and pilsners. They take longer because they have to be colder. It's a longer process to get them where they're at. The most popular style of beer right now in any of the industry is an IPA, which stands for India Pale Ale. Those were created by the British, who needed beers that would hold up when their troops were stationed in India, and they would make the journey from Britain all the way around Africa, around the Horn, and then over to India. Those beers had to hold up because it would take months at a time to get supplies there. So they would aggressively hop these beers. They put these hops in, and they put loads of them in so that the hops, as they're wearing off, the taste was still there. It didn't taste like water. So, but the traditional IPA is really not the popular IPA. The traditional IPA has kind of gone by the wayside. The Hazy New England style IPA, which is in this can here, is the most popular style because it's juicy. It tastes, sometimes it has like a milkshake type of feel to it when you taste it. It's creamy. It doesn't have a lot of bitterness. So beers are rated on a scale. It's called an IBU. It's called the International Bittering Units. The higher the number, the more bitter the beer is. The lesser the number, the less bitter it is. So a beer like this is probably somewhere around 25 or 30 IBUs, so it's not that bitter. But an aggressively hopped beer that has that, you sip it, you make that face, they call it bitter beer face. That's a beer that probably has somewhere around 80 to 90 or even over 100 IBUs in it to keep it, to give you that bitter hop. But that bitter hop, that's where the taste is. That's what people, some people get, it doesn't taste right. No, it tastes right. It's got that bittering in it, and that's what you want. You want that bitter taste. But the fourth beer here is a stout. It's an Imperial Stout. So that's more of your chocolate, dark fruits, cacao nibs. They'll put in, sometimes when they do like crazy, what they call pastry stouts, that's more of your decadent dessert type of beers. Hazelnut.
So like wine, there are dessert beers. And
there's dessert
dinner
beers. There's dinner beers. There's, like, for instance, I was just on Staten Island this past weekend. The good folks from Killsborough Brewing, which operate out of the Craft House over by Van Duzer Street, they're building a production brewery and a tasting room right behind Snug Harbor Cultural Center. So last year, the owner of Killsborough, Sean Torres, good friend of mine, put on this event called a pizza party. So he had different pizzerias from Staten Island and Brooklyn come in. He had a bunch of different breweries from New York and New Jersey come in. And you paid one price. You got 6 or 7 tickets. So you got 7 slices of pizza, and you got unlimited beer pours for 4 hours.
Wow.
Now, all of the beer was on the lighter side, like a Pilsner, because Pilsners go well with pizza, with pasta. You want a light beer with a heavier type of food. When you're eating spicy foods like chili or nachos or things of that nature, an IPA is what you want because you want that bitterness to cut through the spice. When you're having a dessert, a chocolate dessert or something like that, a stout, perfect for a dessert at the end of the meal. The final beer on the end is a non-alcoholic beer, which is very, very popular right now. A lot of people being carb conscious, a lot of people being calorie conscious, and they just don't want to have that alcohol because they don't like the way it makes them feel, especially during the pandemic. A lot of people overindulging per se. And then you have a lot of people that want to do these dry months where they don't drink any alcohol at all, but they still want to feel like, hey, I'm hanging with my friends and I'm having a beer.
Sure.
The non-alcoholic beer is the way to go. And there's a lot more flavor in these non-alcoholic beers
if they
now.
Taste like it,
Yes.
it's sort of a win-win for everybody.
Yeah,
at
it's
that
not
point.
your O'Doul's or Sharps, that's for sure. Those are gross beers, and you should never buy them. I don't even know why Budweiser but I have no idea why Budweiser and Miller still makes them.
I don't like O'Doul's.
No.
I mean,
I can't imagine anybody buys them. They sit on the shelf. They're probably
the
10
Heineken
years
Double
old.
Zero is
Another popular beer.
Yeah, it's got a nice taste. It's pretty close to like a real Heineken. So I'm not a beer person.
Okay.
We know that.
Right.
You know I'm a total champagne and Jack Daniels, so I go both ends of the spectrum on that. Why don't you turn around and teach me what I should be tasting and what I should be looking for? Also,
Go ahead.
Do the craft beer breweries do any programs with bartenders where they teach them so that they can go and teach their own customers?
You know, that's interesting. I have not heard of anybody that does that. I think that's a great idea. I think it would be beneficial for a bartender, especially, and it depends on the bar, obviously.
You know, if you're Guinness certified,
right?
People just love to hear that.
Right.
So craft beer certified would be a great thing.
You know what? I think that's something that I think that would be a great idea if somebody could put together a program to teach people on what the different styles of beer are, how to serve them with what food, and how to prepare them. Because I think sometimes people aren't prepared enough and they don't know what they're looking for. And especially if you're not somebody who's ever drank any of these types of things, you wouldn't know what goes well with what, or even just to have one. You would just think that this beer is a Budweiser.
I'm 44 years in the industry, and this is not my strong suit.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great idea that somebody should do that, because then you can direct a person, as to what type of beer that you have. It also depends on the place that you're working at. Do they have a good draft system, with different variety of type of beers? You've seen a lot of these gastropub type places where the bartenders are experienced with their beer. The local place that I go to in my town, the guys know exactly what I want. And when they see that there's a new thing on there, I walk in, they know exactly what to serve me, or try this. That's the key. And the key with any of these things that I tell people all the time that they say that maybe they don't like beer or whatever, just try it. You have to try it. There's a particular style of beer called a sour. I was not a fan of sours. Didn't like them. Too wine quality for me. Sometimes they were overly sour where I was kind of, ooh, this is too much for my palate. As you know, the audience doesn't. I had cancer a number of years ago. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. And after my chemo and radiation treatments, I tried a sour, and I love them.
Really?
I can't get enough of them. Now, I don't know if that's because my taste buds changed, but I'd like to think that I kind of matured a little bit in terms of different styles that I liked. So who knows? But, I tell people all the time, you have to try in order to know what you like and what you don't like. So the beer I'm pouring you now is from Alternate Ending Brewing down in Aberdeen, New Jersey. As you can see here, it's pretty clear, right?
Right.
So that is a sign of a lager or a pilsner. I mean, they're lager and pilsner is kind of interchangeable in their name. That's what you want to see out of a lager or a pilsner. You want clarity. You want to see through it almost. The foaming, the head, is what you want. I'm going to put a little bit more in here because I want to show you how that head is supposed to kind of rise up. The more head that you have on beer, the better, because it helps with digestion. A lot of people, when they go to a bar and you're pouring a beer, make sure there's no head on it. Make sure it's all the way to the top or whatever. You don't want that. You want the bubbles. The bubbles help in your digestion. If you notice, when people drink beers like that, you get a lot of gas.
Right. Because
there's not enough bubbles. So I want you to try that. All right. Tell me what you get out of that. Ooh, of course I spilled it.
Oh, that's okay.
I know what I get.
Here, wait.
But I want to.
There are 2 cups, so you could taste with me.
Okay.
There are 2 cups each. Now, am I supposed to smell this?
You could smell it. Tell me what you smell.
I think it smells better than a draft beer.
Okay. But what flavor do you get?
I don't know, lemon maybe?
A little bit of lemon. Do you get any bread? You smell like yeast? Like a kind of yeasty combination?
I don't think so. Remember, I don't cook.
I know.
So the smell of food,
so, okay.
I only know what it smells like when it's prepared.
Take a sip.
It's nice. It's light.
Light?
Yes.
Smooth.
And it has a nice coating on your tongue. As opposed to other beers where you go, when it hits your tongue.
Because that's part of it is the rice. It's how long the beer has been sitting there. Who knows if it's been sitting there for months on end. Beer is supposed to be drunk fresh. You're supposed to drink it within, like IPAs, the shelf life of most IPAs are probably somewhere around 90 days.
Well, most people don't know they have an expiration date on them.
Right. Well, what the smart thing that most brewers do is they will imprint a date on the bottom. Some of them use like a weird kind of coating or whatever, and you believe me, you need an abacus to figure it out. Right. So most brewers now on the bottom of a can or on the top of the can, but usually on the bottom of the can, they'll put a date as to when they made the beer. So you know from that date forward how long the beer lasts. All of these beers are in aluminum cans. Aluminum used to be beer's worst enemy because the aluminum was thin. It wouldn't hold the beer up. The shelf life wouldn't be that great. But there have been so many advancements with aluminum that the beer actually holds better in aluminum than it actually does in a glass bottle. So, plus, more environmentally conscious. It's easier to get rid of.
Hand me one can. I'm going to show you something.
Yes.
So when my dad worked for Wrangell Breweries,
Right.
the cans were made with one more piece of metal. It was another process. Part of what he did was redesign the cans so that it was one less piece of metal and it was quicker and easier and cheaper to make.
See?
And he won awards. And I used to look at him and say, but, oh, Dad, that's great. You know,
Right.
let's go buy a house or whatever. Because he bought a house in 1969, but
Right.
I think probably 1968 he did it. He goes, Wrangell made the money. I just got paid to do
Right,
it. And he goes, I didn't
exactly.
actually. And he goes, it's not me, but every time I see a can, I think of my dad.
Right. So this is a similar type of beer. This is from Bolero Snort Brewing. They're out of Carlstadt, New Jersey. They're literally a stone's throw from the Meadowlands. So if you've been to MetLife Stadium,
Is that one local too?
all of these guys are somewhat local. These guys are down in Matawan, alternate ending. They converted an old movie theater into a brew pub. So they show movies sometimes, and they have all kinds of movie-themed food and stuff.
So we have access to it, plus we can support somebody who's
Yes,
local.
exactly.
Okay.
So these guys are right next to MetLife Stadium. They have a huge facility. They make some really great beer. All of their beers are, the names of their beers are bull-based. So this one is called Toro Pills. So they do all these bull puns is what they like to call them. So this one is an Italian Pilsner. Now notice how that head
That's it.
comes up really, really aggressive. That's exactly what you want out of that. And people forget, there's an art to pouring, there's an art to all of these different things.
How many people have yelled at me throughout the years? Well, nobody really yells at me, but I want more head. I want less head. I'm like, I'm giving you the perfect. I know
Right.
how to do this. Like, stop
Right.
it.
So now this one has a little bit more of a cloudiness to it, even though it's a Pilsner. That's okay, because that's what they're going for here. Whereas in this lager, they were going for more of a clearer look. In this Pilsner here, they wanted it to be more bubbly and aggressive. Mm-hmm. When you smell it, it
Smells clean.
Yes, it smells clean, but it has a noticeable jump to it when you sip it. It's kind of got like a little effervescence on the tongue.
Yeah.
That's what
It
you're
almost
looking for.
makes somebody who is like me, who really doesn't know much about this, feel that this is a stronger beer.
But it actually isn't. So most Pilsners and lagers, this one clocks in at 4.5%.
But the little kick in it makes me feel like there's
Right,
more
that there's
alcohol
more
in
to it.
Yeah.
So traditionally, lagers and Pilsners are usually a lower ABV. So you can drink more of them if you're home. Be responsible, folks.
Yes.
You can drink more of them over the course of a day, and especially on a hot day. On a hot day, that's the type of beer that you want because you don't want to be overloaded with all kinds of, barley and wheat and all this stuff just laying on your stomach. You don't want that. So you want something that's easier drinking. And again, you're drinking these when you're outside. Maybe you're at a barbecue. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're at a picnic or whatever it is, or maybe you're tailgating during a game or whatever. Mm-hmm. That's the type of beer that you want. If you're going for a little bit more of a higher alcohol, then you want to go to an IPA. So this IPA is from Departed Souls Brewing. They're out of Jersey City, New Jersey. This is a 6% India Pale Ale. The great thing about Departed Souls, what they do a lot of gluten-free beers.
Nice.
This is not gluten-free. This does have gluten in it. But the owner there, he does a whole bunch of beers that are gluten-free. In fact, they're doing a charity beer for Doug Flutie. That comes out in about a month to support his autism initiative. It's called Flutie Flakes, and it's a beer. I believe it's an IPA.
How cool is that?
It's really cool, and they're donating a portion of the proceeds to his autism group. So that's great. Always good stuff. So this, you'll see why it's. I could smell it the moment I open the can. This is what they call a hazy IPA.
The can is very cool.
Yeah, that's the reason why it's not a phase, Mom, is because IPAs are not a phase. A lot of people thought that IPAs were going to be a phase. In fact, Jim Koch admitted to me in an interview a couple of years ago that Samuel Adams missed the boat on the IPA phase, and by the time they got involved in it, it was too late for them. Everybody else had sort of caught up, which is why eventually, a couple of years later, his brewery and Dogfish Head Brewery merged.
I remember Dogfish.
Yeah, they're still around. Sam Calagione, the owner of Dogfish, and Jim Koch, the owner of Samuel Adams, they were actually at an event in Boston. They got together, they had a conversation, and it was basically Sam saying, hey, why don't we team up? You know, we've got great IPAs, you have great lagers. It's a match made in heaven. It's one of the better mergers in the beer business in the last 10 years because each one of them complement one another with great styles of beer that they make. Right. They're not competing with one another, and it works. So for them, it's a good thing. And both guys, whom I've interviewed, are wonderful people, always giving back to the community. In fact, Jim gives scholarships to certain breweries to help them to continue on in the brewing business. Brings them to Boston to learn about beer, learn about beer and the business of beer and how beer works. Jim is always giving back.
What city in New York is the biggest for beer? I mean, in the United States would be the biggest for beer.
Wow, that's a great question because there are people arguing about it all the time. So
people, I would think Boston.
Boston is a big brewing town. Chicago is big. For me, I think the Boston is big, but I think for me, there's Portland is another big one. But in my opinion, it's probably San Diego.
Okay.
Because there are so many great breweries out there, so many great styles, but they are sort of in my opinion, they're kind of the mecca of brewing. Colorado is up and coming. They have a lot of great beer out in Colorado.
So you're saying that's a good place to go on a vacation if you love this. Okay.
Yes. Listen, first off, the weather in San Diego is gorgeous. Colorado, not so much, but I'm actually planning on a trip next year out to Colorado. I'm going back to San Diego in November to do a little beer tour.
I would do San Diego, Colorado.
San Diego is so much fun.
You go once. I mean, for me,
yeah.
I'm not a nature person, and I'm not going to go skiing ever again in my life. I'm not getting hurt anymore.
Right.
Those days are over.
Right. All right, so this beer... you smell it.
This smells really citrusy.
Yes. So most IPAs have that citrus component to it, but also when you sip it, there's probably not going to be a ton of bitterness to this.
No.
It's got a little bit of bubbles, but for the most part, it's smooth. It's almost like an orange juice quality. Even though you're not...
Am I allowed to say which one is my favorite so far or no? Because we have to love them all?
Of course, no, you don't have to love them all.
I think I like this one the best so far.
Okay. And that doesn't surprise me. Because
really?
Because most people, when they're drinking craft beer for the first time, this is the one that they gravitate to because it has the sweetness to it. It has that little bit of, that oomph to it that you don't get from these other beers. These are more traditional styles of beers. I prefer these more. I like a good IPA. But I gravitate more towards.
If I was going out and I was in a bar or something, I would order this. If I was at the beach in the cabana, I would order one of these. Good,
that's good. Or you can have the non-alcoholic beer. All right, now up next, this is a brewery down in Colts Neck, New Jersey. Most of you Staten Islanders know Delicious Orchards, right next to Delicious Orchards, right off of Route 34. They're called Source Brewing. They are celebrating their 3-year anniversary this week, and they're dear friends of mine, great people who do some amazing things. Now, the can that they did this particular stout in, it's a slim can. So it's actually a 12-ounce can as opposed to the 16-ounce, and then the other two 12-ounce cans on the end. So this is going to pour very dark. And it's going to, actually, for a year-old beer, that's actually held up pretty good. That head is actually really good. Now, when you smell this, and this is strong. This is an 11% beer. They describe it as bold, dark fruit, and lush. That's exactly what it is. So they call it their source of darkness. Now, when you smell it, you're probably going to, what you smell is the fruit, a little banana, maybe. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what you're going to get out of this. And then,
this is very nice.
It's also very dangerous, too, at 11%.
But I like the aftertaste of the chocolate.
Yes. There's a little bit of chocolate on the end of this. Now, some stouts, they'll go very heavy chocolate. So when they do that and it's very sweet, this is not overtly sweet, which is great because I'm not a big sweet beer guy. But there are some breweries who will go way over the top of the sweetness. They call those a pastry stout. So it's basically diabetes in a glass. That's how I look at it. Because you drink one of those, it's about 400 calories, and the sugar level is probably through the roof. So if you have health issues, we shouldn't drink any of them if you have health issues with sugar. But that's the one you should avoid 100%. But it's decadent, it's delicious, it's designed to be sipped slowly. It is designed, most stouts in the glass, when you pour them, obviously you have to keep the beer refrigerated, but this is the type of beer you want to warm up.
Oh, really?
As it warms, the flavors will come out. You'll get more complexity in the flavors. The fruits will start to pull out a little bit, and you'll start to taste them more.
You know, it's funny. If you're a big chocolate person like I am, better chocolates or certain chocolate companies have a very distinct smell.
Yes.
And that smell is just, to me, like, the Chuck Wagon dinner bell.
Yeah.
I smell that, and I'm like following like a loon.
Right.
This has that smell of the better quality chocolate, and when it hits the back of your tongue, going down, it has the same effect of better chocolate that sits in the back of your mouth.
There's a warmness. It's pleasurable. And what's great about it,
almost like a powdery pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So these guys have a farmhouse. It's a 200-year-old farmhouse that they bought a couple of years ago. They are the third owner of the farm. The first owner was an owner from the Revolutionary War. He owned it for 100-something years, sold it. The other family owned it for 100-something years, and then these people bought it. Beautiful. There's outdoor. You can go there. There's a distillery in front of the brewery. It's not theirs. It's somebody else's. But the brewery sits in the back, and it's literally right next to Delicious Orchards. You can't miss it. Wow. Right on Route 34. Great place to go in the spring. Fall, summer it's a little hot. They have some shade up and stuff. They have an inside you can go in, but
it would be nice to go like on a beer tasting tour. And Jersey has a lot of places to go to, right?
Yes, they have a few. It's funny. There is one touring company that does down South Jersey. I believe it's City Brew Tours does South Jersey, and you pay one price. They go to 3 different breweries, which is great. And you park your car, you get in, they take you. The cool thing about City Brew Tours is that you get fed during the ride. So you go to a brewery, then they take you to a restaurant that has beer, and you eat, and then you move on to the final place. And what they do is you can buy beer at these different breweries. They will store it in a cooler on the bus. When they get back, everything's done. You get dropped off, you take your beer, and you go home. It's really nice. They have not done that yet in other portions of New Jersey.
But maybe they will.
I think there's definitely a business to be made. Some guys have tried to do it, and then obviously when the pandemic happened, they had to stop because, again, breweries weren't open. So it's a little difficult. But there are pockets in New Jersey where you can travel to 4 or 5 different breweries within a 10, 15-mile radius, and it's not a problem. The great thing on Staten Island, though, is that you have 2 really great breweries that are literally 2 blocks from one another, and it's a short ferry ride over from the city. I mean, if you could take the ferry over and walk 10 minutes to Flagship Brewery off of Minthorn Street, you can walk right up the street to Van Duzer and be at Killsborough.
I have to say, I like, when I go into Flagship, I like looking at the whole process. I like being able to see everything.
Yes.
And especially for someone like me who is not really a big beer person, and I look at the signs, I have no idea what any of these things mean, but now I might because you've enlightened me and taught me.
I mean, you can, in New Jersey, you have to take a tour of a brewery before you can drink. That's one of these crazy rules that they have, that you have to take a tour of the brewery. Some breweries will just have a sign that will show you how the brewing process works. Others will give you a more involved tour if you want. Still others, if you go to Cape May Brewing down in Cape May, you have to walk the tour before you actually get into the brewery. So you learn about the entire brewing process from beginning to end. God,
it's like going to Hershey where you got to go through the whole thing.
Yes, but at the end, you get the piece of chocolate at the end. At the end, you got to buy a beer. They don't give it to you. But
that's okay.
But what's cool about Source too is you can walk in there, and right on the ground floor you can see the operation. If you go up to the second floor of the barn, you can actually look down and see the brewery process going. Most of the breweries do have that open type of space where you can actually see what goes on in the brewery.
I like that. I like to see that part of it.
And the best part, almost every one of these brewers will talk to you about how they make beer. And that's what's cool. They want to talk to people about it.
Right.
It's a point of conversation. The other part of breweries, more so in New Jersey, I don't know how much on Staten Island, and I'm sure there is because Flagship does a lot of great events. Within the community.
Based.
Very community based. Jay does a great job there with community based stuff. Killsborough does, but they're hampered in the fact that they have a restaurant and they're brewing. You really can't see what they're doing brewing wise because of the restaurant. But once they open their production facility in their tasting room behind Snug Harbor, it's going to be a completely different animal. But in New Jersey, the breweries have become a meeting place for the community.
Sure.
I don't have a brewery in my town, but I have a brewery one town over from me in Westfield, and I have another brewery right down the street from me in Rahway. And I usually go to the one in Rahway. I mean, it's a difference of 3 minutes in the car, but I go to the one in Rahway a lot, which is called Ticket Brewing, because it's convenient for me.
You have to say, though, they really come up with great names for all this.
All right, so Ticket Brewing was, the reason why Ticket is because during Prohibition, when you were running for an office and you were part of your campaign was, are you a wet ticket or a dry ticket? If you were a dry ticket, you were for Prohibition. If you were a wet ticket, you were for drinking. So that's how it stuck. And these guys decided, okay, Ticket Brewing, that's our name. And
I think that's in fact, this one, the name of this company.
This is Source Farmhouse Brewery.
I like their can. I just think Source is like a very cool.
Yeah, their
cool
labels, the woman who does their labels is fantastic. I mean, I love this Source of Darkness. But
listen, Source of Darkness. Okay, yeah. I want that. Yeah, I like it. It totally, it speaks to me.
But even with labels and names of beers, there is a process that these guys have to go through that takes months. It doesn't just, I think the misconception I think that people have of beer is somebody makes a beer, you make a name, boom, and you put it out on the market. It's not as easy as that. You have to go through all these other layers of stuff. The gentleman who owns Ticket, we were having a conversation about this the other day. He was looking for a name for his new beer that he made. He made a sour beer for the first time. He doesn't make sour beers. He decided to make one because everybody was asking him to make one. He actually had me come in and taste test it to make sure it was right. He nailed it. It's not too aggressive. It's a great sour beer if you're just starting out to try sour beers. It's called a Berliner Weiss, which is a German style of beer that Germans created, obviously. But he was looking for a name for the beer, and he thought he had the name. And he had to scroll through, there's an app called Untapped, where people can check in on their beers and what they're drinking, craft beer-wise or whatever. And he started looking to see if he could find the name. And sure enough, by the time he got to the third scroll, he saw that 3 or 4 brewers had the name, but very obscure brewers, not big names, not popular names and things like that. So he feels confident that he'll be able to use the name without somebody saying, oh, no, we've trademarked this beer already.
Well, you can feel free to turn around and tell him he can call it your cousin Diane.
Oh, I like that. I'll tell him that. That's good. I like that.
I'm sure no one else has that name.
I actually gave him the name of one. I'm not going to mention it here, but I gave him the name for a different beer, and he goes, "Oh, I think I told him to call it the Maud, because you get that puckery fig and how Maud was
right.
And he's like, "Oh, I like that. I said, you can keep it. It's yours, free of charge. That's all right." So the last one we're going to sample is a non-alcoholic beer. And this is from Athletic Brewing. There are a number of different non-alcoholic beers out on the market. There's really not a clarity or whatever. You're not looking for a taste. Basically, what you're looking for is the taste of an IPA. Now, this is 70 calories, and since I don't have my reading glasses, I'm not sure of what the carbohydrates are. Is 10?
I don't ever read those things.
Well, for the people who are, weight conscious and calorie conscious.
No, I'm conscious of everything. It's just if I'm going to read it, then I'm going to put it down, so I don't read it.
That's a good way to look at it. So this is a non-alcoholic IPA. Now, mind you, this has been sitting in my refrigerator for probably about a year and a half, so I don't know what it's going to taste like.
It smells nice.
It does. It actually has a pretty good smell. I probably should have gotten a fresher non-alcoholic beer, but it's still, you know what?
It tastes like beer.
It tastes like beer. It's lost a little bit on the hop. It definitely has a flatter taste, at least in my opinion, because it's been sitting for so long. But it definitely tastes like beer, but there's no alcohol in it. I think it's 0.4 or 0.3
What a great
alcohol.
option.
It's, if you're the type of person who's trying to, maybe watch your calories, or maybe you don't want to drink one night, maybe you're the designated driver, and you just want to hang out with your friends, but you want to look like you're still drinking a beer or whatever, and you don't want to drink water or club soda, the non-alcoholic beer is the way to go. I know that some bars are getting non-alcoholic beers in because they know that people want those types of things. But there are the bigger beer names are actually making better non-alcoholic beer. Samuel Adams has a non-alcoholic IPA that's very good. Dogfish Head has a non-alcoholic wheat beer that is a version of their sour beer that they created for these, like-minded athletic people or whatever. It's probably one of the best non-alcoholic sour beers I've ever tasted in my life. Like, to the point where I actually told Sam, I'm like, I could drink a case of this and be very happy. Like, this is something I could keep in my refrigerator all the time and know that I have it to go to if I just don't feel like having an alcoholic beverage.
So when someone buys craft beer and they bring it home, how long should they keep it? I mean, how long can they keep it before you think that the...
As I said earlier, as long as your beer goes from the cooler, your car, to a refrigerator in a short window of time, you're not leaving the beer in a car for 6 hours. You bring it right home, you put it in the refrigerator. Most beer will last you a year or two if you want, and still have the taste. Now, again, like I said, IPAs, the hop kind of drops off after a few months, but the taste is still there. I've had beers in my refrigerator for 2 years, cracked them open, and it's not a problem. And they taste fine because they've been kept at that same temperature. There's been this big argument of whether keep beer warm or keep beer cold. Most brewers would tell you keep your beer cold. It was made in a process that was put in a refrigerator to stay cold. It should stay cold. There are some brewers who say it doesn't matter. It was cold. It's warm. It's cold. It's warm. To me, I feel like if it was cold and then you get it warm and then you make it cold again, you're shocking it. Something is going to get lost in the translation. So you should probably keep your beer as cold as possible for as long as you want. Any of these beers you could probably keep in your refrigerator for about a year or two. Like I said, the IPAs you should probably drink within 90 days. Stouts, on the other hand, get better with age. Most of them do. And when I say better with age, I mean that you can leave them and you can drink them down the road and they'll be fine. They're not going to get stronger on you. There are some stouts that are in bottles that are 15% or whatever, and they're meant to be aged for a couple of years before you drink it because you want to bring out all those flavors that have been sitting in maybe they've been sitting in an oak barrel, in a whiskey barrel or something for a long time. So maybe you want to age it a little bit more. That's okay as long as you keep it at around 50 degrees and you don't shock it with light or different temperature changes. You're in good shape. So stouts can stay for a long time. The rest of this stuff, I would try to drink within 90 to 120 days if you want to keep things rotating in your refrigerator. And if you don't, as long as it's refrigerated, you're okay.
Now, do any of the craft beers come in bottles? Is there a difference between bottles and cans?
No. Most craft brewers now have shifted to cans because, again, they're easier to produce, they're easier to store.
And recycle, probably.
But pallets of cans you can store in a brewery better than you can with bottles. Bottles, you got breakage, you got glass, all kinds of stuff. The cans are much better and they hold up better. Plus, label-wise, they're easier to do than would say a bottle. However, there is an aluminum can shortage going on right now. Aluminum has become much more expensive. This was starting before the pandemic and is now accelerated because of the pandemic. The other big problem that may be creeping up in the next couple of months is CO2.
Yes.
Carbon dioxide is very important to beer. To keep your beer, carbonated, when you're cracking it open and stuff, very important. We're starting to find that some CO2 suppliers are running out of CO2, and they can't supply everybody. So the smaller guy is getting boxed out. Same thing with aluminum cans. The big breweries that are pumping out beer by the truckloads are able to buy pallets of cans at a cheaper price. I think there are 2 or 3 aluminum can manufacturers in the country. Ball is one of the big ones, but Ball sells in bulk.
Right.
So the smaller brewery that maybe makes, 500 barrels, 1,000 barrels, whatever it is, they can't afford to be without aluminum cans. And a lot of them will say, you have to buy, X amount, which is way above their budget.
Right.
So what we're finding is some breweries will team together, buy a pallet of aluminum cans, and kind of split them up. You hold some in your facility, use some.
That's smart.
It's smart, but the other problem with craft breweries are a lot of these places don't have the room. They don't have a lot of space to. A place like Bolero Snort has a huge warehouse. They can keep those things for a finite period of time. A lot of these guys can't. They have smaller facilities, so they can't hold that much stuff. They have to crank stuff out. So it's it sounds like it's a complicated business, but the best part about what I do with my show, and I tell people all the time when they come on, it's beer. It's not rocket science. I want to have fun. I want to ask you about you, how you got started, what beer styles you like, what are you kicking back with at the end of the day. There are more serious things that we sometimes have to talk about. In New Jersey, we're having all these issues with the New Jersey Athletic Beverage Control.
I just never heard about. We have about 3 minutes before we're going to say goodbye. But tell me about this, because I didn't know about this prior to our conversation earlier.
So 2 years ago, the New Jersey Alcohol Beverage Control came up with these new rules that they said we were going to level the competitive playing field for restaurants and craft brewers. Nothing of the sort. It is designed to hurt the craft brewers, the local craft brewer, the smaller craft breweries, to basically put them out of business. They're preventing them from doing certain events. They're preventing them from doing a lot of different things. They have to get special permission.
They limit the amount of events?
Limit the amount of events. It's not like a bar who can hold a karaoke night every week. They told the craft breweries, you can only hold 25 events a year. You can only hold X amount of this. If you go and do a festival, that counts as an event. You have to notify us 10 days before. All of these different bureaucratic things.
What's the thought process behind limiting them when obviously
it's all about trying to hit them in the wallet?
Too.
The restaurant lobby in New Jersey thinks that the craft breweries are competing with restaurants. Couldn't be further from the truth. Craft brewers in New Jersey can only brew beer and only brew and serve the beer that they make. They can't serve food. Here's the absurdity of it. If a brewery in New Jersey sells a bag of hard pretzels to somebody, that's not counting as food. But if I walk in with a warm pretzel, I'm the Philly Pretzel Company, and I want to set up a stand in there and sell my pretzels, that counts as food. It's the same thing. Hard pretzel, soft pretzel. They're pretzel.
This is insane.
Insane. So, it's too long to get into, but I have challenged Governor Murphy to meet me for a beer at any craft brewery in New Jersey. I will meet with him because he has the ability to stop this right now. They want it legislated. They want the legislature to come back into office in September and pass some laws, which they're going to. A lot of legislators in New Jersey are very upset by this, and they want to change this. But the governor has the ability to stop this right now through executive order to say, look, we're going to put a moratorium on it for 90 days, let the legislature take care of business, and we'll move on. He has yet to do it. Governor, meet me for a beer. I got no problem. Anywhere you want. We can have a great and a frank discussion, and we can support a local business, which is what he should be doing.
I totally agree. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a little shocked over it.
Yeah.
Like when we were talking prior to going on the air, and you told me, I'm like, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine telling somebody you put up a social media post that counts as advertising.
That counts as advertising.
That's
we
terrible.
can't have fun things in New Jersey. We can in New York.
But everybody moves from Staten Island to New Jersey, which, listen, for me, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm not moving to Jersey. I made the progression over here. That's it. That's as far as I'm going.
Right.
If I'm going to Jersey, I'm going to visit you.
Good.
That is it. And also all of your new friends in this business.
Absolutely.
Because this one is my absolute... Well, you know what? I actually love them all. But this one reminds me of chocolate, so it's really my favorite.
Good enough.
And, sorry, Dad, but Wrangell tasted too watery, and this is all my new world now. But, he would have loved it if he was alive. He would have enjoyed this. But, Al, I can't thank you enough for coming on. You're the best.
Thank you. Mwah.
Thank you.
Anytime.
Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.